Okay. Well, hello and welcome to Tolt Studio. I'm Kimberly Ogbayani, the operations manager for Tolt Yarn and Wool. Tolt Studio is an education space, a space where we can connect with you as often as we can with special guests, teachers, designers, creators, and community voices to further the enrichment of your craft and yourself. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Amy Gille of Bien Aimée. And this has been a journey for her that she's going to share a little bit with you about. But I can remember hearing, oh, if you get to go to Paris, go to Loisité. And, it just like, it was something that I dreamed of doing, didn't really get a chance. But, and from that, it's grown from, I think, a delightful thing at the cafe into creating her own yarn and then her own shop and then returning to focusing on the yarn exclusively. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Amy. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I am so honored to be here and to be able to spend my Saturday evening, because it's Saturday evening here in Paris, with you all. I thought I'd introduce myself. My name is Amy. I was born in Olathe, Kansas, to my father, who's American, and my mother is Korean. And I am named Aimée after my great-grandmother's sister, Aimée, who is French. I moved to France in 2003 after previously meeting my husband while I was working abroad. And I started my life in France in 2003. While I was trying to find myself and figure out what I wanted to do, I kind of stumbled on to becoming an entrepreneur. And that's how I started my cafe, Loisité. And I did that in 2008, shortly after my son was born. I had the cafe for about 7 years, and this was Paris's first knit cafe. So this was a place where you could come and drink tea and knit, and I imported yarns from the United States. And so I remember I'd go home and fill my suitcase full of all these American yarns that we couldn't get in France. And I was like really just like completely obsessed with hand-dyed yarns. And I was like, this is what I'm going to bring into my cafe to expose the European market to hand-dyed yarns. After doing this for about 7 years, I kind of got the idea. I was like, maybe I could start my own yarn company. I had amassed a lot of experience in working with hand dyers and understanding kind of how the business ran. And I thought, well, let me give this a go. And so that's how Bien Aimée was born in 2015. Bien Aimée is turning 7 on May 20th this year. So I can't believe that saying that out loud, I'm kind of like, I can't believe it's been 7 years, because I feel like we're constantly innovating and doing new things. It's always like, feels like it's like the first years of the brands of running a yarn company. And I feel completely blessed to be able to do what is my passion, which is color and knitting. So I want to rewind back to about February 2020, where we all were. This was right before lockdown happened and coronavirus came into our lives. We had just finished the construction on our new studio, and we were slated to move in to our studio on March 13th. Lockdown happened in Paris on March 12th. And so it was a really crazy time, because like overnight, everything was closed. We weren't able to move. And my husband and I don't even know how we did it, but we moved that studio by ourselves from our small little studio that we have on Avenue d'Italie to our new studio that we have today. And over the 2 years during the pandemic, I rebuilt my team. And I started some new projects. Other than dyeing yarn, I also started making yarn. And one of the yarns that I made was Corrie Worsted. So Corrie Worsted is a mix of Corriedale and Gotland, and it's a worsted spun yarn. So it's called Corrie Worsted because of the way that it's spun. It is spun sort of like a DK worsted. It really does transform itself when it's blocked. The inspiration for Corrie Worsted was my base helix that I came out with earlier in 2019. Let me just swap my camera over here so you guys can get a little close up of what these bases look like. So here you can see, let me zoom in a little bit. They are the same color because they both contain Gotland wool. So Gotland wool was something that I discovered when I started dyeing on the helix base. Gotland is kind of behaves a little bit like mohair, and I had just become obsessed with mohair. Actually, it's not even true. I've always loved knitting with mohair. And I always wanted to have a yarn that behaved like mohair, but that wasn't actually mohair. And the other component of helix is merino, Falkland merino. I love this yarn. I love the drape of this yarn. So this is a very thin lace weight yarn that I dye. We dye about 35 colors on this base, and it is great for holding double. So whenever I talk about helix, I'm always telling people to hold it double, it equals a sport weight. So sport had become a weight that I really enjoyed using and knitting with. So I knew that when I commercialized helix that I'd always kind of talk about it as using as a sport weight. Knitting sport weight for a few years, I was starting to feel like I wanted to have a thicker yarn. And in my lineup, that's how I came up with Corrie Worsted. But Corrie Worsted is actually Corriedale. So here, I'll flip this over, 75% Corriedale and 25% Gotland wool. I opted for Corriedale because I knew that I wanted this to be a sweater yarn. And Corriedale has this excellent bounce, which is, I mean, that's exactly how I explain. That's the difference between merino and Corriedale. It's just a bouncy yarn. And because of the way that it's spun, the worsted spun, when it's blocked, it just fills the space where you've knit. So you can knit patterns that are a worsted weight or a DK, and Corrie Worsted will fit the bill right. So on this gray base, we dye about, I think that we're at about 35 colors on Corrie Worsted. I'm just going to show you a small collection of these colors so that you can see. I'll zoom out a little bit here. So this is the base color right here, the gray. And on top of it, we dye colors like Fleur Morganite, Belle Rose, Dawn. We can go into the deeper depth of shade. We've got Eric Northman, Kitsune, Lee's. We pull in some blues here. We have Winterfell, Hegelia, and this is one of our new colors called Lichen that we released this spring. Let's pull in some of my yellows here for you guys, because you know I have a mad love for yellow. So we have Yellow Brick Road, Goldenrod, and Cocoa, which kind of bridges between yellow and green. And then we'll go right over to green here. We have Yona, a new green called Olive Juice, and the Shire. And obviously, for sweater knitting, I was very aware that people love neutrals. This is like one of the first things I learned about being a shop owner, especially in Paris, is that people want gray yarn to knit gray sweaters. And as someone as like me who loves color so much, it was a little bit foreign, but I embraced it. So we have about 9 grays on the Corrie Worsted line. Here, I'm just showing you a few of them. So there's a pink that kind of snuck in here. This is called Peach Sweater that came out this summer to go with Peach and Lichen. So these are 2 colors that I've been kind of obsessing about recently. But along here, we have all these different shades of gray that we dye all across this gray base, which is called French gray. So I've made a yarn. Let me swap my camera here. Hi. So I made this yarn, and it was about a 2-year process through the pandemic. I started a little bit before the pandemic started. I had been in negotiations with the mill, talking about how to actually make a yarn, asking all the questions. Then the pandemic happened, so then the project kind of slowed way down because things were really complicated with working with the mill and just generally complicated on our side. So when Corrie Worsted was fully developed and ready to be released, this was in June 2021. So I released a worsted weight yarn in this middle of summer, just because that was the timing of when I had the yarn. 6 months before this, I remember I was on Christmas break. We always close between Christmas and New Year's. And my husband always jokes that I need like 3 days all by myself to just kind of sleep and recharge. And so I spent those 3 days in my bedroom knitting, sleeping, thinking, dreaming, And I thought to myself, I was like, I'm going to make a book. Like, I could make a book that could go with my yarn. And so I started taking all these notes. And right when we got back from Christmas break, I pitched my idea to Len Publishing to write a book. And the idea of this book was to collaborate with 10 designers who we know in our industry and to have a long-term project to work on together. I provide them with the yarn and the ideas for the designs. I knew that I wanted texture stitches. And so I told specifically the designers we need to do cables, color work, no brioche, that was for sure. Funny stories, like when I approached Nancy Marchant, who we all know, she's like the queen of brioche. And I said to her, I was like, would you like to be in my book? And she was like, yeah, for sure. And I said to her, no brioche. And she was like, okay. And then she did intarsia cables, which just blew my mind because I was like, yes, and I want intarsia in this book as well. So I approached 10 designers to be in my book, Worsted. And one of the main reasons that I did this, and I'm going to quote myself from my book. I said, with this book, I wanted to create something that became a tangible way to connect with people through knitting. In this moment when we must remain distant and isolated because of the pandemic, working on this book was the project that carried me through this time. I hope that knitting these patterns will bring you joy, and the stitches that you knit from this book will represent a memory or a special moment for you. Because this book absolutely got me through the pandemic. What it did was it offered me the opportunity to have a long-term collaboration with these 10 designers. We worked over the year to make worsted, and we released it in November 2021. So I thought I would do kind of like those look of the day videos that everyone's been doing, and I would put on all the sweaters and accessories from the book for you, styled my way with over my dresses. So I thought that we would get started with that. But before I start doing that, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions or anything, because once I start that, I can't stop. I see lots of smiling faces. I think I'm going to get started on the look of the day.
If any questions come up, I'll read them for you, Amy.
Okay, great. So usually my general uniform of the day is our dresses like this, and then dresses with pockets. And so I'm always thinking about sweaters that will look good over this style of dress. And so when I was working with the designers, I asked them specifically to make the lengths cropped and regular length, because I like to wear all my sweaters cropped. So the first sweater that I'm gonna try on is called Azucena by Nadia Cretin-Lechen. And in my version, obviously I used Yellow Brick Road. There we go. And so we've got it right above my pocket, so I can put my hands in my pockets. I like to wear my sweaters with almost zero ease. And in the yoke, I've used Stone, Avoine, and Belle Rose. I'm wearing the cropped length for this sweater, and this is the size 5. The Azucena also exists as a cardigan. So working with the designer, I asked her if she would be willing to make a steeped version of her sweater. And this is actually a really great this could be a great first color work sweater for someone, especially on worsted weight, and especially if you want to try steeking. I just want to show you this steek here. There's nothing holding this down. Like, the Corrie Worsted Velcros to itself, so the minute you cut it, it just sticks on and sticks together like that. I could go in here and put a nice ribbon, but I just wanted to leave it raw like this so that everyone could see exactly what's going to happen right after you steek. So this is the Azucena cardigan. So we knit this one just a little bit longer than the pullover. And in the options, I followed the pattern exactly as written. So it's got these really slight balloon sleeves, which I find to be really stylish.
Darlene from NYC, she says, your sweaters always fit you so well. She loves your style.
Ah, thank you. Thank
And there was
you.
a question about colorways actually on the cowl that you were wearing before.
Oh, okay. So this is a cowl by, I think I'm going to say the name wrong, so I'm going to have to send it to you, Kimberly, so that we can put it in the show notes.
Okay.
But the cowl is Yellow Brick Road and Floor Morganite. This is by a knitter. Her Instagram handle is called Barba Knits, and her name is Linda, and I'm going to butcher her last name. She has an Icelandic last name, so I prefer not to say her name incorrectly, and we'll put it into the show notes so that you can get all of the details. This is a pattern that came out just recently on Twist Nouveau. So it's Yellow Brick Road and Floor Morganite.
Okay. And there was a question that maybe we can address later, which was about characteristics of other fibers that you've worked with, because she loved hearing, Marcella loved hearing the characteristics of Corrie. So we can come back to that.
Absolutely. I will share all my secrets. Hold on, I'm going to put that there so I can show you how I learned about fibers.
Okay.
So next up in the worsted book is this beautiful shawl by Stephen West called Knit Improvisation. This is kind of a texture adventure of knitting. Obviously, the texture changes so quickly that it's something that you can just knit and never get bored of. I love semicircle shawls, and Stephen knew this, so he definitely took that into account when he designed this shawl. This is my sample. It's shown in the book, and there's another sample that Stephen used with Yellow Brick Road, Coquelicot, Moria. But I just love pink. And this is inspired by a dress that I was wearing in the book. So it fits really beautifully over the shoulder like this. Sometimes when I'm working at the office, I'll just have it on over my shoulder and wear it like this. Or if I'm wearing it with a coat, I put on my shawl first, and then I put my coat over the top. So we get all this nice shawl that's like tucked in and cozy. And this is Knit Improvisation by Stephen West.
That's the one that we knit for our shop. That's a sample.
Oh, amazing. All right, next up we have Amina by Sylvia Watts Cherry. So hers is a very colorful version. So if you look inside the book, she used pinks and greens and grays. And the minute I saw her design, I knew I wanted a grayscale version of that. I feel like Amina is this modern Argyle style sweater using the intarsia technique. It has a very chic drop shoulder, just a little bit of color work here, color work broken rib in the sleeves, and the back is just plain. And I knit mine very cropped. I think that this is one of the shortest sweaters that I've ever knit, and I love it. It actually goes with all of my dresses, whereas the As You Seen I Came Here, this one's quite short. I generally wear it with a different style of dress so that when I'm wearing my dress, it's all tucked right in underneath my sweater. Okay, next up we have the Andrea cardigan by Andrea Mowry. I'm going to show it to you in two different sizes. So this yellow version, you can see this in the book, is size 4. And this is shot on that gorgeous model that's in the book. So this cardigan fits me with 0 ease. So depending on the kind of dress that I'm wearing, usually if I'm wearing a more sleek dress, I would want a more fitted cardigan like this. And this is the cropped version, so that if you do knit the long version, you just do another repeat of the beautiful motif here that Andrea uses, and it'll come right down. Has these really beautiful deep pockets on the side, and you use your gauge swatch for the insides of the pocket. So no yarn is wasted, you guys, for this pattern. So this is the size 4, and it fits me with 0 ease. Something that I do recommend to people, so if they're trying on these samples, I see, like if I see the person pulling it a lot like this, you probably should knit 1 size up than what you would normally knit. This is an open style cardigan. It is not meant to be worn closed like this. It is meant to be worn open like this. And that was something that I noticed immediately when I was wearing it with 0 ease. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to knit the next size up. So that's what I did with this version here in bone. This is the size 5, which gives me just a little bit more ease. The sleeves are a little bit oversized, which is very comfortable, and I can easily close it right over my chest, and I find myself not pulling it, and definitely can access the pockets very nicely. So this is something to think about when you want to knit Andrea. If you're wanting to have a more oversized fit, you can definitely go up to 1 or even 2 sizes. Because it's a drop shoulder design, you can customize the sleeve length. All right, next up we have Stratified by Tiff Nealon. So this is a sweater that's using colors that is a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I initially wanted to knit it in yellows because I always wanted it on my sweater in yellow, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick other colors. And during the test knit, there was a tester who picked these colors out, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. Her placement of the colors were different. And so I immediately placed the pink next to my face because I knew I wanted to have that color next to my face. But I would never have knit a sweater for myself with kitsune or quartz fume. Those are 2 colors that I'm generally not very attracted to. But once these colors came together, I was absolutely in love. I love the attention that the light band brings right here to my waist. I don't have a waist, like my bust and my hip size is only like 1 inch difference. So like my body just kind of goes like this. So it's really nice to have this kind of line, as you can see with my sleeves going across here. And I really like having the pink close to my face because pink is my second favorite color. And I knit this cropped to wear with all my dresses.
Marcella is very impressed that you've knit so many sweaters.
I had some help. For the book, we knit 28 samples. And so I had 3 sample knitters who I've mentioned in the book who helped me work through all of these samples. I wish I had time to knit that much. Okay, so next up, we have a beautiful shawl. So this is like a texture adventure shawl here too as well. A semicircle shawl. It's actually a pie shawl by Seisha Green, and the pattern is called Soraya. This one I actually wore all the time in the winter because working here in my office, sometimes it felt a little drafty, and I love just having this shawl over my shoulders like this while I was sitting at my desk or working in my atelier. It feels like a statement piece, kind of like a duster, and having it nice. And sometimes I could tie a knot in the back behind me like this, and it would just stay tucked behind me while I was working at my computer. So it felt like a little shrug in a way. If you were to wear this with a coat, I use the Stephen method of like scrunch, scrunch, scrunch. You throw it on, throw over each side, pull it down like that. Whoops, pull that around like that. And I put on my coat over the top to anchor it around my neck. So I have 2 versions of this one, and I wore the other one all winter long. Super cozy. This one takes 5 skeins of Corrie Worsted.
What was the color of the one you wore all winter long?
Stone. It was a gray color. Okay. Next up, we have Perennial by Nora Gone. So this sweater is really special because I had 2 designers from the book that I didn't know. Sylvia Watts Cherry, who is the designer of the Mina sweater, and Nora Gone, who's the designer of Perennial. And so I was really nervous to reach out to both of them to see if they wanted to go on this book adventure with me. And Nora agreed immediately, and she's kind of like my knit idol. So I was super excited when we were in the planning stages of the book. She asked me, she's like, which one of my designs is your favorite? And I really love the Susu sweater that she designed for Loop in London, which is kind of has this like high-low hem style. She knew, I had learned that she had been following me on Instagram for a while, so she knew that I like to wear these dresses with pockets and tunics. And so she designed for me the perfect sweater. So this is the crop version to wear over your dresses or high-waisted pants. So if you look in the book, there's a model wearing high-waisted pants and it just looks so good. And so super cute sweater that she's knit using cables and twisted stitches. There's also this amazing detail of like cables right here to hide the short rows. And if you're not a fan of the high-low hem, you can absolutely omit this part and just knit it straight across the front. And that is mentioned in the pattern as well. So this is Perennial by Nora Godin.
Ethelyn says she's knitting her second one.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, you guys should go to Ethelyn's Instagram and look at her first one. It's incredible. This sweater is also knit in pieces so that you will do some seaming to put it together. It has incredible structure. You can really feel it in the shoulders when you put it on. It just feels very structured and it just fits perfect. Okay, next up we have a sweater called Yesteryears by Maxime Cyr. So this is a really cool yoke design that he came up with. He is a graphic designer by day, knitwear designer by night. So he used his skills as a graphic designer to come up with this really unique motif. So I always ask people, if you want to pop into the chat, what do you see when you look at this yoke?
I see paper dolls. Diana says she sees hearts.
I see hearts.
Women holding hearts above their heads.
Yeah, I see champagne glasses too.
Oh, that's fun. People holding hands, some upside down.
Yes,
Jackie.
Definitely. I do see the paper dolls too. So I really love this sweater. I knit it with bracelet length sleeves so that it would just sit right above my watch. It's like cropped so I can put my hands in my pocket. I do love I do love the two-tone yoke here. So you start with one color and end with another. I think it's a really nice way to do color work. This too could be a really nice first color work project as well, because you're only working with two colors at a time.
Julia says she used to see mountains, but since I mentioned paper dolls, she can't unsee it.
So just for information, all of the sweaters that I knit for myself are the size 5. Okay. Next up, we have the Canal Poncho by Nancy Marchant, which incorporates intarsia cables. So I have never done intarsia cables. I learned how to do intarsia cables because I was going to have it in my book. It is a fun technique to do, you guys. I really recommend, if you want to dive into Canal Poncho, read the pattern all the way through. Nancy gives you great advice on how to knit the intarsia cables.
A sweet note, Rachel says she follows you because she loves your style. She's a super fan of your fashion.
Oh, thank you. So I've never even thought to knit a poncho, you guys. That's like not on my radar. Like, I'm a sweater knitter, or I'll knit socks. Sometimes I'll knit a shawl, but like a poncho, I was like, I don't know. And so when Nancy pitched it, she was like, you'll see, it is a super versatile piece and it is so easy to wear. She's incorporated these sloped shoulders here so that it makes it super streamlined and stylish. It doesn't add any extra bulk. Whereas when a lot of people do drop shoulder, that's because the cut is like this and then it comes down and you have all of this extra fabric here. And because she's put the small slits at the end, it just makes for the perfect poncho to throw over your dress. I'm wearing the size 3. we're gonna have a size 2 knit because I kind of want to see what the smaller fit would look like. I have seen people try on our smallest size and it looks like a little vest because the sleeves actually come up right here. So it looks like you're wearing a cabled vest and it's super cute. I think if I'm going to go to Rhinebeck this fall, I will definitely be wearing this over my dresses. This is like the perfect Rhinebeck sweater to wear. If it gets a little hot, you just kind of lift your arms like this.
It's really impressive. It's stunning. Patricia says, she says it thinks it would be beautiful even if it was just one solid color.
Absolutely. So that is an option that's written into the pattern. If you don't want to do the intarsia cable, you can just pick one color and just do cables. With the leftovers from the front panel, Nancy has made a companion cowl that goes along with the canal poncho. And that is also the same for the stratified sweater that I tried on. There is the strata hat that is available that you can use all the leftovers for that. So the last pattern is called the Asawa scarf by Tien Q Lam. This is the medium size of the scarf. I just love this motif that she's used here. So this is the right side. So it's like these beautiful traveling cables that kind of come up with a mix of garter stitch. And this is the wrong side, which is equally beautiful. So when you're knitting a scarf with cables, sometimes a cabled scarf doesn't look so nice on the wrong side, but this one looks so beautiful on both sides. And this is the medium size. There is a small and there is a large wrap version, which we knit using 5 colors of Corrie Worsted in a fade fashion. So this is definitely very big because you use 5 skeins of Corrie Worsted and it can be worn. I sometimes wear it around the office just as a statement piece over my dresses. This looks super chic over like a black dress. I've used 5 colors for this one. So we started with Sandstone, High Garden, Bone, Av1, and we ended with French Gray. I explained the fade portion on my blog so that if you guys wanted to make a version for yourself, I explained how we did the fade transition between the colors here. It works really well. And also like, it would be great just to kind of wear out without a coat and have like a wrap. So like this. All right, how are we doing on time, Kimberly?
Well, we are at 12:36.
Okay, great. So I wanted to go back to that question about fibers.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the question exactly?
Let me go back to it and we'll get the name of the scarf pattern into the chat.
Thank you.
It was from me, and I'm Marcella, and I was just curious, you know, I always see these beautiful sheep names mentioned in these yarns, and I'm always just curious I love the idea that there's a bounce to it, and I get that some knitted things are really squeezable and luscious. But can you name some other types of fibers that you work with and give some characteristics?
Absolutely. So I'm kind of new to researching like the characteristics of wool. I started specifically when I was working with Corrie Worsted. I knew that I wanted an origin specific yarn. So the Cordale that I work with and the merino I work with come from the Falkland Islands off the coast of South America. I'm going to show you this fiber source book that I use. This is actually a really great book if you want to learn about different fibers and how each fiber has their own characteristics, and when it's spun into a yarn, gives the yarn its own personality. So this is definitely a book that I have been looking at. You can see that I've got many pages bookmarked here, especially the ones that I'm really interested in spinning yarn. I am actually working on 2 new yarns that are going to be coming out based on things that I learned from this book. And so I've been working with some mills here in Europe, and hopefully later this year I'll have a yarn, and then early next year another new yarn coming out. So if you want to learn more about kind of like the personality of the fibers, grab this book. It is amazing.
It's a reference on my shelf. I use it all the time.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I also just want to put a comment in. I've tended not to really like the semicircular shawls because they just look so big. But looking at it on you, I just loved watching you wear it in different ways. And thank you for showing us all these wonderful patterns.
You're
But yeah,
welcome.
I'm gonna tackle one of those. I think that looked really amazing.
Let me show you another semicircle shawl that I really like to wear a lot. Is this one. So this is the Dustland shawl by Stephen West. And this is featuring my yarn Corrie Confetti. So I don't want to forget to talk to you a little bit about Corrie Confetti, because while I was making Corrie Worsted, I was talking with the mill and asking them a lot of questions about things like waste, because I really wanted to be mindful about making yarn, and I just really wanted to know all the processes, and they were really great about teaching me about how much waste comes off for each spin. And so I asked them, I was like, what do you do with the waste? And they're like, oh, sometimes we use it to, you know, stuff upholstery or do other things. And I said, could I like recuperate it and make a yarn out of it? And so then they were like, oh, that's actually kind of a great idea. So we put our heads together for a few months, and that's how we came up with, let me pull these all over here, show you guys, Corrie Confetti. So the first spin of Corrie Confetti that I made, obviously I was like, it has to be yellow. And so Corrie Confetti consists of 50% undyed Cordell wool. So this is non-recycled wool that's been dyed yellow. And then it also includes 30% natural recycled fibers. So those are the fibers that are coming off of my spins of Corrie Worsted that I make. And it also includes 20% of LBA recycled threads. So here you can see all the little confetti bits that are here. These come from my dye studio. So running a dye studio at the capacity that I dye, there's inevitably waste that's coming off. We have damaged skeins. We have yarn that's not sellable. And so we don't know what to do with it. And I've always been kind of obsessive keeping it, squirreling it away. And so I have like 5 years worth, because I guess we started tapping into the stock now. I have like 5 years worth of yarn that I've squirreled away. And my husband was like, it'd be great if we use this for something. Like, could we use it for something? Sometimes I would donate it to schools, because you can still knit with it. Some of it you can still knit with it. Some of it you cannot. And then this project came along to make Corrie Worsted. And so I send my recycled bits to the mill, and they comb it into the fiber and spin it into yarn. So our first batch was ochre. Our second batch was Graybow #1. And then our second batch that came out was Nightfall. No, sorry, that was out of order. Framboise, kind of pink color. Then it was Nightfall. And we've had 3 spins of Graybow come out. I'm going to put these in order because each spin of Graybow is slightly different. So this is Graybow #1. No, this is Graybow #1. So it's a little darker, as you can see. This is Graybow #2, came out a little bit lighter. The base of this color is not dyed. This is all based on whatever recycled fibers are coming through the mill at the time. So for this first spin, the colors were darker, a little bit more pink. This one's a little bit more gray. And then Graybow #3 just arrived, and it's looking very similar to actually Graybow #1, just a little bit lighter. And so that's another fun aspect about this too, because it's a little bit of an adventure when each of these batches come in. I'm not really sure exactly how the color is going to come out. And so we number these batches. And so there's Graybow 1, Graybow 2, Graybow 3. And so we have a new color of confetti coming out next week. I thought that I would sneak peek it to you guys. It is called Mallard. It is this gorgeous teal green color with speckled bits here. And we are going to be releasing this next Friday, on Friday the 13th.
It's gorgeous.
There you go. So I thought that I would show you guys a little bit of my studio setup. Since we moved into this new studio over the pandemic, we finally, after about 1.5 years, we were able to get it up and running properly, with all the right staff, and just we figured out how to run a big studio. And so I thought I would show you a day in the life of a skein of yarn at Bien Aimée. So this is a 10-minute video, so grab your knitting. You guys can sit back and watch this while we knit. I'm going to share my screen to you. Alrighty. If you have any questions, please pop them into the chat and we can look at those after the movie.
That was awesome. Thank you.
That was my first time making a movie like that.
I think you said, were you able to get pretty much all your staff members in there?
So I got everyone who works on the production side. So the dye team and the pre and post production. What you did not see is my online sales team and my communication team who works with me like on my book and like social media stuff. So, but that's like another, I think I'm going to start a little movie series now. So. Yeah, it was really fun filming that for you guys. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So I see that I have the chat open, so I thought I would streamline something. So by the way, I put the name of the pattern. So it's Minster by Linda Eric Doder for the cowl that I was wearing at the beginning of the session. Someone says, Raylene's asking, how many employees do you have? So I currently have, I think I have about 23 employees now, not including myself and my husband. So it takes a lot of people to dye yarn, especially at the level that we're dyeing yarn. Someone is asking how many skeins are dyed in a day. So it really depends on if we have a full dye team. Our dye team has been a little thin these last 5 weeks. We've had some people out with COVID. So generally in normal times, we can dye anywhere between 700 to 800 skeins a day. And we dye 5 days a week. So yeah, but that can also vary between that can also go down to 400 depending on what techniques we're doing as well. So if we're doing a lot of semi-solids, like what was shown in the video, those go a lot faster than speckled colorways because those are multi-layered, very time-consuming colorways. Anything that has to take into account any like hand painting takes longer.
Going back a bit, there's someone asked about Ace and Knits, and I promised them I'd bring it back to you.
So Ace and Knits is another pandemic project that I started for myself. If you scroll back in Bien Aimée, you'll see there's a time when I shifted from wearing all like black dresses, starting to wear color. And this happened, I want to say in about January 2020, right before the pandemic started. I always wore black because I felt like it kind of hid some of the features on my body that I didn't want to pay attention to. And I always found it hard to find colors that really expressed my personality. And then I found this brand called Ace and Jig. And that's why I started the Ace and Knits account. It was partially to push myself to get dressed every day during the pandemic because we were all stuck at home and I was wearing pajamas every day. And my best friend who loves Ace and Jig too was like, let's get dressed every day. Let's put on our pretty Ace every day. So I was like, okay. And so it was a challenge for us. And we did it every day for a month. And then this I just started an Instagram and started posting it. And then it became something that I just continued and I've been continuing for the last 2 years and I can't stop now. So yeah.
That's great. The other one was you have a great sense of color. Is color part of your education background?
No, absolutely not. Growing up, I've always loved arts and crafts. I remember loving to color as a child. I was always fascinated with colors, looking at colors, but it was not something that I just studied formally in school. For a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I just studied everything. And I remember sitting down with my dad when I was in high school. I was like, I don't know what I want to major in. He was like, then go major in a liberal arts degree because you study everything when you do that. And I took an art history class during that curriculum and it just really opened my mind to things. And I was like, I really love color. So I started studying color theory on my own. I started taking pictures and photography. So I was really exploring colors through photography, but I did that all just for fun. My background is in French language. That's what I majored in university. And I worked in marketing for a very long time before I started my own business. And yeah, that's kind of how I landed where I am in color because I was knitting all the time and obsessed with color and I really wanted to go towards that.
All right. Someone asked, and I don't know if you already answered this, do you dye through the night?
Okay, so maybe I mentioned in the video that we were filling the pots for the night cook. So what that means is we finish dyeing at 5:30, 6 o'clock every day. We set some of our deep dark colors. So like Winterfell, which is a very dark color, and it takes a long time for the color to set. We'll set them on the burners with a timer, and the timer will go off, and we'll just let the pot cool off overnight. And sometimes the pots stay warm all the way until the next morning when we come in, but that's the time that it takes to get the color to set. Also, some people don't realize that our neon colors are colors that need a long time to set as well. So we generally like to dye our dark colors like these at night, and then we do all of our neons too.
All right. Winterfell is a big favorite of mine. And there was a question, is each job responsibility separate, or everyone knows each job responsibility and they can fill in as needed?
So one of our favorite things here at Bien Aimée is being multitasking and being able to cross over between teams. And so we're actively training people from the two teams that you saw in the video to be able to pop back and forth between each team depending on what we need. Being a dyer is a very tiring job. So like doing that every day, all day long for a year straight, it's tiring. So we try to make shifts so that people can switch back and forth and have other tasks to do as well. I do have people who work on the dye floor that can actually go pop over onto my online sales team and help out, and vice versa. And so that's really great that we're all multitasking, I guess that's what we'll say. In French, we call it polyvalent. So just to be able to go and help out. And it makes a really solid team because we all know exactly the amount of work that's going into everyone's job, and it's really great.
Yeah. You actually answered someone's request. Marcella asked, she says it sounds ridiculous, but would you say something to us in French? But you did it already. And Patricia says, I love how you set your colors. I've never had a color come off issue with your yarn, which is a pretty big deal. Yeah.
We take dyeing, we want the colors to fix. There are colors that will just systematically bleed. Colors like pink, red, those are really, really hard to get set. And we put in notices when people buy those colors to let them know. We use just the right amount of dye for every batch that we're dyeing. We try not to use too much pigment. We also try to cook our colors at the right temperature so that we don't damage the yarn, and so that we don't lose that beautiful integrity that all the bases that they have. But generally, sometimes it happens that something does not get fixed or set, and you just write to us and we'll fix it for you, because it does happen sometimes, a fluke of nature. Maybe we forgot to add some citric acid to one pot as we're dyeing and things like that. So it does happen though.
All right, I'm going to join you on the screen. We're coming up on our time. We can go ahead and maybe answer the last question. The name of the shawl again.
Oh,
Stephen's
so
design.
this one that I'm wearing is called the Dustland Shawl by Stephen West.
Oh, and Sana just put it in the chat for us.
Thanks, Sana. Yes.
All right. Well, Amy, thank you so much. It's just such a delight to get to share, what you're up to, and it's delightful for me too, because I first reached out to you in 2016. Can you believe that? And I guess the yarn had only been a year.
Yeah, Tolt is one of my first stockists. Like when you guys wrote, and I already had been following your shop for a long time, and I was like, whoa, it was like dream shop.
Yeah, and so here we are. It's like 6 years.
Yeah, so wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for joining us. This will be posted on YouTube within, by Monday. And for those who missed part of it, some people came in a little bit late. And thanks everybody for attending, and see you next time.
Bonne soirée. Au revoir.
Au revoir, Amy.
Au revoir, Jane.
Au revoir.
Bye, everyone.